Gentleman's time has expired. We now go to the gentleman from Massachusetts, Mr. Lynch.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Welcome, Director Chopra. Good to see you again. Thank you for all your good work. I wanted to ask you about the proposed rulemaking that was announced in November. So we've got a bunch of these larger fintech firms that are using digital wallets, and in a way, they're sort of blurring the line between regular commerce and banking. And so I know that the original announcement was that you were going to look at some of these larger firms and require them, because they are in a good part of the banking business, require them to report as we require small banks and credit unions. I wanted to just get some of your thinking behind that, and how big does a fintech firm need to be before they would come under this reporting, which I think is appropriate for some of these larger and busier firms.
It's interesting. You have a lot of non-banks, particularly with apps that are transmitting, I think it's now trillions of dollars globally. In many ways, they look a lot like what we see emerging in China, where large tech firms have a lot of ability to collect data, move payments. Yeah. So we've proposed bringing some of those firms and subjecting them to supervision. We already have enforcement authority over them.
Right.
We think the supervision actually makes sure there's a level playing field between the banks that are doing it and the non-banks. There's a number of issues, fraud, privacy. I think there's going to be a lot of value in that. We're collecting comment on the specific threshold, but we estimate it's about 1 or 2 dozen that could come under.
So you just had a case. I was reading that one of your enforcement cases recently was Innova. Was that the name of it?
Yes, Innova.
They actually went in and took money out of their customers' accounts. So obviously we've got that.
Yeah, can I just share, Congressman?
Yeah, please.
That we have a lot of situations where people are able to get information about a customer, and then they can just grab the money. And there's lots of issues that impacts. So making sure that our payment system, has a lot of fidelity. This is so important to the lowest income people in our country, because if a wrongful debit in their account can send them into a tailspin.
Right, and there's credit rating issues there based on much of that difficulty. What about? I know one of my colleagues raised an issue earlier today about I think it was Citibank, and there was a discrimination issue there with Armenian-sounding names, I guess.
Well, it was actually names, particularly that ended in YAN.
Yeah.
And IAN.
I've got a big Armenian population in my district, so I'm quite familiar with that.
Those are obviously going to impact the Armenian community.
Where does that come from, though? I mean, do you have any sense of?
Well, as we investigated the enforcement action, they had determined that they actually filed false reports to those borrowers as to why they were declined. And they ostensibly said it was to detect, prevent fraud. But, we allege, and I think provided very strong evidence, that was prohibited national origin discrimination. We have laws on the books that don't allow it to say, you type of people.
These are Armenian Americans, though, aren't they?
Yes.
Yeah, so in this country. I was just curious what the underpinnings of what the motivation might have been there, if anything, during your investigation.
Yeah, we can share more, but there was, they had detected, they were excluding people from the Glendale, California area, which has a very high concentration of Armenian Americans, as well as people with that last name suffix.
Okay, well, maybe we can talk offline about that. I do appreciate your good work, however, and how readily available you've been to members of this committee. I think it's commendable the way you've handled your responsibilities. Thank you, and I yield back.
Gentleman yields back.